This is lesson 3 in chapter 2 in our unit over Parent and Offspring. This is over animal life cycles. This lesson is for 5th grade. We're going to be discussing in this lesson metamorphosis, both complete and incomplete. We'll be discussing internal and external fertilization, and we'll also be discussing what happens to the eggs after they're fertilized. Let's start with talking about metamorphosis, both complete and incomplete. So, like plants, animals all have a life cycle. Most animals, when they're born, they resemble what they'll look like when they're an adult, like you and me, dogs, baby chameleons, even. They hatch from an egg and they look similar to what they're going to look like as an adult, just a small version. But there are some animals that go through a change. They go through something called metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is a series of distinct growth stages that are different from each other. That means that they look one way when they're a child. They look a different way when they are an adult. There are two different types of metamorphosis. As you can see here on the screen, there's complete metamorphosis and incomplete metamorphosis. The difference between the two is in complete metamorphosis you have 4 stages, and in incomplete metamorphosis you have 3 stages. They're all very distinct. Let's start with complete. Incomplete, you have the egg stage, which is similar to incomplete. But here's the difference. You have a larva stage. A larva is an immature stage where you don't resemble the adult at all. The caterpillar is clearly different from the butterfly. Okay? And it eats different food too. Okay? From the larva stage, you're going to enter the pupa stage, and that's a non-feeding stage. You're not going to eat here. You're going to be in a hard case-like cocoon that's surrounding the caterpillar organism that's inside of it. A lot of people think that this is a resting stage, that they're in there asleep, but that's not true at all. They're very active in the pupa. They're moving and changing, and they're preparing for their exit from the cocoon when they turn into an adult, and they look entirely different. So when they hatch from that pupa, or emerge, I guess you could say, they are going to look different. They're going to have wings in this case, different mouth parts, new muscles, legs, and now they're an adult. So that's complete metamorphosis. 4 stages: egg, larva, pupa, adult. Incomplete metamorphosis has 3 stages: egg, nymph, adult. So the similar stages are egg and adult, except the difference here is we're changing larva and pupa and having a nymph stage, which I guess you could say is like a teenager stage. Some insects that go through this include grasshoppers, termites, and bedbugs. A nymph is it looks similar to an adult, except it's lacking the wings. It may lack reproductive structure, so it's kind of a teenager. It's not quite an adult yet. It just lacks some stuff. So again, 3 stages: egg, nymph, adult. Now, because of the exoskeleton of these insects, they can't grow gradually like you and me. You and me grow and change every day, and you can sometimes you can tell the difference, and sometimes you can't, and before you know it, some days you look in the mirror and you look a lot older. But with these insects, they go into their cocoons or their exoskeletons to make room for these larger bodies, and they emerge something totally different. Grasshoppers go through 5 separate sheddings just before they reach adulthood. So with each stage, the wings emerge a little bit more and more, so they get larger and larger with each shedding. Okay, so again, that is a life cycle of the butterfly. And grasshopper went through complete metamorphosis and incomplete. Again, complete has 4 stages, incomplete has 3. So what about the animals that don't go through metamorphosis? We talked about sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Let's focus on the sexual reproduction part here. It all starts with fertilization. Once you get the male cells, the sperm cells, with the egg cells of the female, and they join and combine, the fertilized egg is going to start to grow, which you can see in the picture here. The problem that most animals face is that the cells are really delicate, and you have to protect them. Okay, let's talk about external fertilization. External fertilization occurs when the sperm and egg join outside of the body. This occurs with fish, some amphibians, can occur chickens. So the difficult part here, let's talk about, like, say, salmon, for example. The male salmon is going to prepare for fertilization. He's going to find somewhere to dig gravel in a lake bed. The female is going to dig a little shallow nest of gravel and then release her eggs into that little ditch that they've dug. Once they're in place, that male's going to come back and release his sperm over the water. So his cells are in the water trying to get to the egg cells that are in the water, and they're going to join outside. That's the outside of the body joining of egg and sperm. That's external fertilization. So this is a high-risk process here. If you think about it, ponds, rivers, lakes, oceans, they're full of predators, right? And the fish have to worry about their cells actually surviving. They have to worry about the eggs getting eaten or the sperm cells dying in the water, and they're never going to join. If they don't join, fertilization doesn't happen, and your offspring are not going to form. You're not going to have the kids here. Okay? Many sex cells are lost, and some are eaten, and being exposed to those temperatures and pollutions does not help them either. So what do these animals manage, or how do they manage to produce any offspring at all in this condition? What they do is they produce a great many sex cells at one time. Instead of just one or two, they increase the odds by releasing it sometimes probably hundreds of eggs and sperm cells at one time. So the odds are you'll at least have one or two out of thousands, hundreds, thousands laid, and they'll reach adulthood. Okay, that's why fish and amphibians release so many eggs. Okay, so external is out of the body joining. Internal fertilization is when they join, sperm and egg cell join inside of the body. That's like most animals, reptiles, mammals, birds. That's all internal fertilization. Internal fertilization increases the chances of fertilization and offspring survival. Okay. It protects the sex cells and the fertilized eggs from drying out. It protects them from the dangers of the harsh environments, pollutions, predators, and other organisms. So since the chances of fertilization are much greater, there's fewer eggs produced. So you're not going to have thousands of eggs produced by the females here, because odds are they're very likely to be fertilized by the sperm male sex cell. Okay, so internal's a lot safer because mom's protecting the offspring and everything's happening inside the body. External fertilization, you have to produce thousands, hundreds of thousands of eggs just to try to hopefully get one or two fertilized. It's a lot more risky. Okay, so what happens to a fertilized egg? Let's talk about it. So after fertilization, an embryo is going to begin to develop inside of these eggs. Okay, and depending on the animal and the environment in which they live, their eggs may be different. Fish, frogs, reptiles, birds, mammals, they all lay eggs. Fish and frogs are going to lay them in open water. They're exposed to hungry predators, right? The embryos are going to be protected on the inside by a jelly-like layer around the egg. And those embryos are going to get the food from the yolk. So if you think of a chicken egg, it's got yolk on the inside. If you've ever opened an egg, that's feeding the offspring on the inside. Well, on the outside, you've got a tough shell that's protecting them from the predators. Reptile and bird eggs, they have tough shells that are filled with watery liquid, and the liquid gives the embryo the wet environment it needs to develop and protect it from drying out. So keep that in mind too. Not only do they need food, they need to protect themselves from drying out. The tough outer shell also protects the growing embryo from being eaten by other animals. And again, the yolk on the inside gives the embryo food. Now, most mammals take the safety of growing the embryo a step further. So instead of hatching outside of the mother's body, the eggs of the mammal are going to develop inside the mother. Humans are that way. Most animals, dogs, cats, and such. Embryos are fed by the mother as they develop inside. Now, monotremes, they're the only mammals that lay eggs, so they do it differently, but all other known mammals give birth to live young. Okay? So that was animal life cycles. We discussed metamorphosis, both complete and incomplete, the 4 stages compared to the 3 stages. We talked about internal and external fertilization. Internal is where fertilization and the cells are joining inside the body. External, they're joining outside the body. And then we talked about what happens to the eggs once they're fertilized. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Edmodo.